My name's Eli Delaney, and I have the honor of meeting some pretty cool people. These are the entrepreneurs, the artists, the creatives, the game changers that are making a positive impact in the people that they meet. And I'm a firm believer that the people that you meet can get you anywhere you want to go. And this show is my way of sharing them with you. It's my way of also helping you meet cool people. All right, welcome back, everybody. Eli here, and I am here with Erika Andresen, and she and I got introduced by Jeffrey Casanova, who you've probably heard his name a few times because he introduces me to a ton of people because he's like the biggest connector out there. And we ended up having a very cool conversation about her business stuff, which is business continuity. And I didn't no clue what that actually meant until I actually talked to her. And then I figured out what it was. And it's all about keeping your business going, keeping it alive, thriving, making money, increasing value, even when disaster and distractions, disruptions, all those nasty things happen, because that's how that works. And so I had to bring her on board. So Erika, thank you for coming and hanging out today.
Thank you, Eli.
So tell us a little bit more about you, because I didn't do a big fancy introduction like I normally do because my video is doing weird stuff. And I may just make this show as real as I can. But tell us a little bit more about what is business continuity and how did you get started with it?
So you pretty much were pretty spot on for summarizing what business continuity is. It's about keeping your doors open and cash flowing through any type of disaster and disruption. And most people like to assume that it only means natural disasters like hurricanes or floods, but it's natural disasters, man-made disasters like an active shooter, a cyber security incident. It's also disruptions like a key piece of machinery not working, your entire warehouse staff quitting because they won the Powerball, a leader dying. Any of these types of things could also be a disruption that you need to be prepared for, or going viral overnight, because there are ways to prepare for that, which will make sure that you are successful and not stressed versus it killing your business. So a lot of people also like to think that risk management, like, oh, I do risk management. It's like, it's not the same. Risk management is an inherent process of business continuity. But when risk management fails, business continuity picks up from there. So you could always have some level of operational capacity. So you're always making money. Now, how I got started in it, it's, I used to say I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. But then I realized that everything I did was me just growing into the perfect mashup of a business continuity professional. I started off my professional career as a corporate lawyer in New York City, doing corporate law for big, huge financial institutions, which made me quite miserable, especially in the mid-aughts when my clients were the ones who caused the world economy to collapse. So I had to defend them. And I was like, this feels icky. I mean, I actually felt like a lawyer, like, ew. And when I was doing pro bono work to make myself feel better, it was with veterans. And I was like, wow, I'm actually using my law degree for something good. And I decided at that point I was going to take a $70,000 pay cut and join the active duty military so I could help veterans all the time without charging them for it, because that felt dirty. And then it was like very much a trial by fire, because I had all this experience as a lawyer before going to JAG Corps. They're like, hey, we're gonna give you like 4 jobs, and one of them, don't worry about it. It's only one meeting a quarter. It's the Emergency Operations Center legal advisor. No big deal. Okay, that was a lie, because in 2 weeks we had massive rain that caused flooding to the point where I-44 was shut down for a couple of exits because the whole entire interstate was flooded. And that was my first taste of doing emergency management and helping people through a disaster. And then every job I had in the military after that kind of stayed within that wheelhouse. So I was doing wildland fires when I was in the Pacific Northwest. I was advising how to respond to a pandemic when I was in Massachusetts. I also was deployed. And in my job when I was deployed was making sure that every bomb we dropped was legally being dropped, and also doing high level risk management for our missions for the most likely, least likely, most deadly course of action. So I decided that small businesses needed this kind of help too. And it was a shame that the failure rate of small businesses is so high. It's about 80% after 5 years. But like something like a franchise only has a 5 to 10% failure rate after 5 years. And the main difference is the franchises are given business continuity plans and SOPs from the mothership, and most small businesses don't even know what those things are. And so I made it my mantle. I could have gone into the big corporate world to do this because they've been doing it for decades. But I was like, you know what? Small businesses don't know about this. And I really want to help them because they deserve to know.
Yeah. Well, and thanks for sharing that because it's funny when you and I first talked, the whole concept I was like, okay, I get this because it is a systems and processes mindset. And okay, how do we prepare for when something happens? Because ultimately it will. It's like I always talk about technology is because that's my wheelhouse is it's not a matter of if it goes wrong, it will blow up at some
Mhm.
point. What are you going to do to make sure that you deal with it as best as possible? And a lot of times, like for my clients, when they come to me, they don't have anything like that. They have no SOPs or any of that kind of stuff. And now I'm looking at it going, okay, this is what I've been teaching for 15 years, except for I got like my one little spot that I do it in, which is, the running of the technology, especially CRMs and your email flows and stuff like that, where you're talking about, okay, what happens way, way bigger. And one of the things I remember when you and I talked, you were talking about the real simple of having a backup if your supplier goes down.
Mhm.
I even a lot of brick and mortar businesses don't really think about that. So let's talk about that kind of stuff and talk about it from a standpoint of not just brick and mortar businesses. Cause I know even a lot of my clients, a lot of people listening to this are solopreneurs.
Mhm.
So where does this stuff come into play for them? And what are some of the things that they need to be thinking about that we know that they're not already?
Right. So, regardless of what type of business you have, if you are a solopreneur who does a product or you're doing a service, you still have an ecosystem that supports you. It's not everything was inside your four walls. So, we'll start with the products because it's easier. So, when you have some pieces of your supply chain that you need, there's a couple of factors. If you have just one supplier and they wind up going down, or they are located in Houston, Texas, where you get hurricanes and they're impacted, that's something you need to consider because when you have to change your supplier, if you're doing it last minute, there's things like extra cost involved. There is quality issues involved because is it going to be the like and kind of quality that your customers are expecting? Because is it going to be the same type of product? These are things you can plan for in advance. So if you absolutely love the supplies that one of your suppliers gives you and they are in Houston, have your backup be outside of Houston, not in a hurricane zone. And if you are somebody who does just services and maybe your thing is completely virtual, so you're like, yeah, I got Zoom. Okay, but what if Zoom goes down? Do you have also the ability to use Teams? Not everybody's computer is very compatible with Teams. So, do you have another way of doing this? Do you have Google Meet? So, it's having a whole array of options at your fingertips, but you figure this out in advance and not in the moment when you're stressed out. Because the benefit of doing everything in advance, aside from the fact you're not stressed, is you've probably negotiated the best rate for those things in advance.
No, and I love that because you're thinking about it from a standpoint of what is your backup plan if something goes wrong. A great example of this, like I was speaking, I think I may have even shared this story with you when we were talking first. I was speaking for a group about 2, 3 weeks ago, and all of a sudden my computer just died, like nothing, no clue what happened with it. The first thing I thought of is like, I don't know what's going on, but my backup is I literally took my phone, logged into Zoom over the phone, sat it on my laptop right in front of me and said, all right, sorry guys, you don't get all the fancy graphics and everything, but you still got me. I'm back. And it was like, okay, we have a backup plan just in case. I've had times years ago, back when the internet video and streaming and stuff was really unreliable. I had one time where I was doing a webinar and all of a sudden the service, like my internet provider, I think died. And luckily, the webinar service I was using had a call in, so I literally dialed up the phone and just I was like, "All right, we have no visuals, but here's what we got, and we're going to continue this." Having that backup of some sort is
Mhm.
always it's such an important thing, and I think that most entrepreneurs these days, especially like small or micro business,
Yep.
solopreneurs or small teams, stuff like that, they're just thinking about the basic day to day, but they're not thinking about the what if situations. And one of them that I think is really big that I think it would be great for you to talk about is redundancy in teams. Like, how do you deal with that? Because that's something that I think a lot of people don't think about as well.
Do you mean Teams, the platform,
The
or Teams
people,
like the
the
people?
people. Yeah, the people. Yeah.
Okay, so well, it's funny you're asking this now because this is like newer material for me to talk about because I live in Asheville, North Carolina. So just suffered through Helene and the massive disaster that happened. And a lot of people here, well, first of all, for me, I had no power for a week. I didn't have internet. Well, internet came back before my power did. And I also didn't have the ability to use my phone because all of our, like, of the 19 towers, 16 of them were knocked out. So it's like you also have to plan for, and I do this with exercises. What if you don't have the ability to communicate? And it's great that the internet came back, but I couldn't use it because I had no power. And one of the things I say is as a big component of your team is mental health. And I was prepared because I'm a prepper. I knew what to do in advance. I did a whole bunch of things. I had everything charged up as much as I could before the storm. I thought it would like we'd be out of power for 3 to 4 days. One of the things I did not factor in, and I tell people this, like, first of all, I started shutting down stuff 2 days in advance. I was like, okay, I got to cancel these things. I got to move these things because they're inconsequential in the big scheme of my business. Plus, they're not big money makers. And I moved the things that I needed to do with money that was going to bring me business. I moved that to right before the storm and try to get as much work done as possible. Plus, I took a lot of stuff offline that I could work on while the power was out. But when you're in survival mode, and I didn't realize this until I was in it, you can't really work. So having a plan and knowing how it's going to impact you or probably going to impact you is a big thing. I was like, oh, once I fled to a hotel on day 5, I was like, oh, I'm going to be able to shower. I'm going to be able to like flush the toilet and all this stuff. And I'm like, and I'll have power. I didn't do any work. I was just so overwhelmed by being in survival mode. And then I could have and I should have canceled some work that was due and I didn't. And some of my worst product came out because I was forcing myself to do something that I didn't have the ability, the mental capacity to do because I was still in survival mode. And a lot of people here, like the businesses, a lot of people left town and didn't come back. And some of them, especially in the hospitality industry, left and are not back. So even when the restaurants reopen, they have 60% of their staff on hand and they have to plan for that. And I think you can actually make plans for this. You can assume what your business is going to operate like when you don't have people anymore, how you're going to try to bring in new people, how you're going to get stuff done with less people. You're going to have to open up with less hours, maybe offer less of a product. But if you communicate this to your clients in advance, saying like, hey, we just went through this disaster. I'm going to let you know, like, we're going to do everything we can, but we have to reprioritize things. We're going to reach out to you individually and help you get what you need from us, but also appreciate that we're coming through a disaster. I mean, this is an extreme example. It's a real life example that happened to me and everybody around me. But that's one of the things that I would recommend is always plan for the most extreme and pray that you don't ever have to use it. But if you do, you've already thought about it.
Right. And I think that that's the big thing. A lot of people aren't realizing you just have to plan for it, hoping you never get to use it. It's like I always call myself the optimistic pessimist. I hope for the best, but I'm prepared for the worst. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you think about that and you put those kind of pieces in place, and this goes across the board from, even your redundancy of people, or like what you're talking about in your situation is a great example. I do this for myself. Like when I'm going to say, if I'm going to go spend a day at a coffee shop, knowing that I may or may not have power. So I need to be prepared to not have to plug in my laptop, which it sounds like a simple little thing. But back in the day when your laptop was lucky to get 2 hours worth of juice out of it, you
Right.
had to think about these things. So I'm like, okay, all of my files are downloaded. They're on the computer or on a jump drive ready to go. That way I don't have to connect to the internet because the internet's going to use more juice and it's going to cut my work time down. Thinking through these kind of things, I think is super, super powerful. And a lot of times they just don't think that far ahead. And I love the way you're sharing a lot of this stuff. Now, so I got your book before I left town to go on vacation. And so this is how to not Kill Your Business, which I love the title of it. That was awesome. Um, I did get the opportunity to read it on the plane, both there and back. I had a good time with it, and I loved how you go through and explain, what this business continuity is. Like, a lot of people understand the concept of SOPs, but
Mhm.
usually they kind of suck at those. They don't even do the bigger picture stuff.
Right.
What were your thoughts when you started writing the book?
So honestly, the when I first started my business, I wanted to help mom and pop shops because I felt that they needed it the most. And really, my innate desire, my passion, was born from walking down the street one day and seeing a bar I'd liked closed, like permanently closed. And I said to my buddy who was next to me at the time, like, "Oh no, they closed." And he said, "So what? They sucked." And I went, "No, somebody's dream died, and everybody who works for that person had to go home and say, I don't have a paycheck anymore to pay rent." And that's really what drew me to wanting to help people because communities are enhanced by small businesses. You have a place to go out to eat. You also have your employees who can pay their rent and their basic necessities, plus enhance their lives by buying other things with the extra money they have. And they usually get that from other small businesses. So there's this beautiful cycle to be part of. And the reason I wrote my book was twofold. Like I said, it was originally from the mom and pop shops because in part of my market research, I realized they would never spend a dime on business continuity. But I'm like, you know what? I can give you a book that is going to bring you through, first of all, educate you on what it is. I ask a whole lot of questions to get you thinking. And that's a very important. If I get you thinking about it, that is half the battle. And then to actually take the steps to do, because my book also has a worksheet to give you a very rudimentary business continuity plan where you can actually figure out what you need to do, what information you need to gather. A lot of it is just putting in the time and effort in advance. And you don't, aside from maybe paying somebody or buying the book to tell you how to do this stuff, it's really no more money other than that for the most basic and rudimentary thing. It's to get you in a more secure place so you're not caught unawares, you're not having to shut down your business. And and the way I write it too, and I take this from my legal background because I tell people all the time, I'm an inherently lazy person. I love working smarter, not harder. And when I had clients in legal assistance, which is basically legal aid for the soldiers, if I used all these big words, how is that helping anybody? Because my client wasn't understanding what I was doing. And then they, in turn, would not be able to assist me with their defense or their plan. So when I explain things very basically, instead of the big, huge technical jargon, because I also did some market research on business continuity books, and there are business continuity books, but they're written by continuity professionals for other professionals. And I'm like, who is that helping? My desire isn't an ego stroke. It is actually to help people and be of use to them. And when I can, my superpower is taking this really technical stuff and spilling it down into really digestible bites of information that are helpful. That's really what the book was about and what I was trying to do.
Awesome, love it. And it's great because, like I said, I read through it, I got it, and it was one of those things. It was like, oh yeah, as a small business, we just don't think about this stuff, and that's. I think it's great to realize, like, you talk about so many different aspects. One of them, you actually, when you filled out the thing, you wanted to talk about. Mentioned the brewery that you helped out,
Oh,
and you have some of these. You have these oddball things. It's like, let's go look at a couple of real world examples of how you actually help somebody, number one, recover if they have a problem, or two, what like, even if before they've had the problem, how do you help them put that stuff in place?
mhm. So, well, the brewery that I didn't actually help them. I know what they did and talked to them about it. So they learned from the COVID pandemic what they needed to do. How like they got a spirit of helping everybody else. So the
Mhm.
brewery culture here in Asheville is massive in what
Right.
people do to help each other. And so they already have this system in place of knowing what to do to sustain operations. So two examples from Asheville, even before Helene. One was from before Helene. There was just a lot, like July, it rained pretty much every day here. And that's abnormal. And one of the breweries, they had paved over a part of their parking lot with cement to make more room. But the thing is, and I know this because I'm also an emergency management professor for graduate students, one of the things about creating a defensible space to natural disasters, and flooding is one of the most prolific and expensive natural disasters, is when you pave over things with either asphalt or concrete, you are now preventing the water from being absorbed. So greenery, mud, all that stuff, that dirt, that'll absorb water, so it's not actually flooding everything. But once that's saturated, it starts flooding. But when you have concrete or asphalt, there is nowhere else for that water to go initially. So it's already starting to flood. So this one brewery, they flooded a lot over the summer. And all the other brewers are like, hey, we'll give you some kegs. Hey, we'll let you use our equipment for a little bit. They really came through to help this one brewery survive, and they did. But then you have this whole entire Helene thing where some of the breweries, they lost everything. And oh, I think actually now I'm thinking it is this one brewery I did help. You're right. I forgot about that one. It was my favorite brewery. So I said there's a huge brewery culture here, and there's a lot. It's like my neighbors manage one, but that's different. So some of them just lost power, which meant they couldn't brew, which meant that they couldn't regulate the yeast in the brewery process. So some of their stuff was going to get lost, like their product was completely get lost. But one of my favorite brewery, their building was literally lifted off the foundation and washed down the river with all their brewing equipment. And that's just because of how forceful the water was. This was swift water, to a point where a Connex, which is a shipping container, was found completely bent around a pole. That's how forceful the water was. And this brewery, two people who owned it, they started a GoFundMe. I advertised their GoFundMe. And so I knew about this grant that exists in advance. If you have a business continuity plan and you are a small business and you register with them, it is the Readiness for Resilience Grant that's sponsored by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation with FedEx. And if you are ever in a disaster zone, a declared disaster zone, they will reach out to you proactively and give you $5,000 to recover. So pretty much everybody in Asheville did not get this. I've tried to help them, and I've been blocked by the organizations being like, I think they want to know more about marketing. And I'm like, okay, that's not going to help them, but whatevs. But the same organization, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, knew that pretty much nobody in Asheville was going to get this grant because nobody registered with them because they didn't have continuity plans. So they started a secondary grant with Amex that said for $5,000, we can give you $5,000, but we're limiting up to only 1,000 people, 1,000 businesses. So I reached out to this brewery, and the owner, I wrote him, I wrote him on his GoFundMe page. I didn't know how to get in touch with him otherwise. And I'm like, this is going to sound super shady. I'm not looking for your money. This is not a scam, but I need you to apply for this free $5,000 to recover. Please do. Look, here's this type form. I looked through it already. I mean, it just made it sound even shadier. Like, I've already looked through the application for you. It's super simple. Just put your information in. And he wrote me back and he's like, you know what? Thank you so much. I would have had no idea that this grant existed. I applied, fingers crossed. So that's how I helped that brewery. But it was an interesting thing with the brewers here, because so everybody else who were suffering, who lost everything, or their distribution was down on the river, they were able to reach out to other brewers in like Raleigh and also in Charlotte, and then do contracts with them to brew there. But there is a lead time of 4 to 6 weeks per batch. So in addition to them making these arrangements to brew at other places, those places were donating kegs of beer to their tasting rooms so they could at least be open and make money, which is part of the thing too. It's not necessarily for profit, it's for survivability. And I also thought that was a really brilliant thing. These are all things you can plan for in advance. You can say like, hey, if we're really, in a bad way, can we have this agreement with you to manufacture things at your place in lieu of ours, if it comes to that? You can make all these agreements. Can you just imagine if you're like, oh God, this happened, but you know what? Thank goodness we have this in place. It's kind of like estate planning. And if you have a healthcare proxy in advance and someone's like, are we going to pull the plug or not? Are they DNR? That's already figured out in advance. So the amount of stress that you don't have, or that is substantially lessened because you've done it in advance, I can't even tell you like how valuable that could be.
Now, that is a great story. And it actually, as you're telling it, it was making me think about so those of us that are in that coaching world, solopreneurs, like we already have relationships with so many different people, but what if something happens? A great example is a lot of times we have virtual assistants we work with. Well, what if we actually okay, let's collaborate and see how we can train this person to be ready. And maybe I can give them some extra hours if something happens on my end, or vice versa. It's little things like that can make a big difference too, because I know, I mean, I hear it all the time. People like, all of a sudden their virtual assistant disappeared on them, or a lot of times we get our assistants, we get VAs out of the Philippines, and they're known for hurricanes and stuff
Yep.
happening. So sometimes they'll be, underwater for 3 days, and it's like, you still got to get the work done. So
Yep.
having those kind of backup plans, it's, again, I go back to the fact that when you and I first talked about this, I'm thinking about it that, okay, this is what corporations do, but how do we as small businesses, as solopreneurs, take the same concepts and break it down and bring out these little things like that? The collaboration or co-op mindset, I think, is huge. I think that's a great idea. And a lot of times, people just don't think that far.
No, and so there's collaboration because I think was it chapter 10, Get Yourself Connected? Because
Mm-hmm.
that song, yes, because all the chapters are songs.
Yes, I
It's
did catch that.
it is about going out and seeing what resources exist in advance, and some of it is within your community. So specifically in Asheville, which disappoints me a lot in how the city ran things or didn't run things, if it were. Um, so NOAA is the organization that sends they call them the hurricane hunters. So the planes that fly up into the eye of the hurricane to report back size of the hurricane, wind shear, wind field, what category it is, what it's growing to. There is a NOAA office in downtown Asheville. And I'm like, why wasn't the local, mayor's office or the county in communication with them where they're like, this is far worse than you're preparing for because you haven't ordered any evacuations yet and you should have. Like, I don't know why there was a disconnect, but there's nothing that prevents you from going up and saying, like, hey, I would like to start a working group with you, or at least open a dialogue with you on what are you doing with this? What information can we share? And even the Chamber of Commerce here locally should have an organization, have a meeting with the mayor's office, because if there is going to be an evacuation declared, or they have access to information like, hey, this is going to cause a lot of flooding, they can share it so those people can then disperse it to other people who wouldn't otherwise have access to it. You can go to your, and I said one of the things for, like, I ran a active shooter exercise the other day, because one of the things I do once a month is I run a little exercise where I give you a fake business and I say, this happened, what would you do? And one of the things I said, wouldn't it be valuable to know how soon it would be for cops to show up to your place if you put in a 911 call for an active shooter? Do you know, it's good for you to know how much time you have. So how would you know? What would you know? And everyone's like, I don't know how I'd know that. Call them, call a 911 and see how long it takes. I go, no, you can actually just call the precinct and be like, hi, this is where an address is. What is the average response time to this location? So you know this kind of stuff and you can use it in your preparation. There are so many resources out there, especially have your fire department come through your building as well and tell you what is a hazard and how to, help avoid, because one of the beautiful things that you're getting rewarded for your preparation. That's why the Readiness for Resilience grant exists. They're rewarding you for preparedness. The fire department can reward you for your preparedness because you're now a partner with them. They know what to expect when they go into your building. If you're having a fire, if you have chemicals stored somewhere, they know where the danger is. They also tell you how to store it correctly. They will also give you free training because they want to make their lives a lot easier as well. There's so many free resources out there that you're not using because you don't know about them. And that's, there's nothing, kind of like shooting your shot with dating. The answer is always no unless you don't ask. And if you ask, the answer is probably yes. And it's like you get the most wonderful things just by asking.
Now that is great. And it's funny because you brought that up, and I don't remember if it was in the book or in the conversation you and I had, but you were talking about these other free resources that are out there, that it blows me away that so many brick and mortar businesses don't have any idea about. Not a great example. I'm going to be, my daughter just bought the grooming salon that she's been working with for a couple years now. And so now she's now officially the owner. And I'm like, all right, she's going to be listening to this episode because I'm going to make sure she listens to it and does, do all the check marks, because this is important stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's great. A lot of people don't understand what this stuff really is and why it's such important things. And we don't, again, it goes like big corporations. They've been down that road long enough that they've got these plans in place. But for those of us that are smaller, we just haven't dealt with it. And so I love this stuff. I love talking about it because it's like, these are all those plans. We always talk about, financial preparedness, and we talk about growth preparedness, but we don't talk about the disaster preparedness, because that's not the stuff we want to talk about. That's not the exciting things, and I think it's important that we have this stuff. So as we're starting to wrap up here, any last thoughts or any last things that you want to share with everybody?
Um, I just, back to the purposing, I especially with Helene and being in Asheville, I talk of just about how important small businesses are to recovery from a disaster into a community. And when everything started opening again, everybody here, they just kept talking about how they wanted a sense of normalcy. Now, there's a new normal or your old normal. You're just going to have to see whatever, the dice brings out for you. But people were staying out at restaurants longer because they liked being out. They're going out and spending money at these places that are opening because they're like, I haven't been able to go out and get a beer for 2 months, and now I can. And it really psychologically helps the entire community if you are around. So small businesses are an integral part to recovery and the resilience of a community. Because think about it, even when you have real estate ads, what do they say aside from the square footage, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms? Like, you are a 5-minute walk from a cafe.
Mm-hmm.
There is a downtown shopping area within 10-minute drive. Like, you are a draw for a lot of things in the community. And I beg you to be around for so many reasons aside from helping keeping the community thriving, but also for the people that work for you. There's so many levels. It's not just your bank account. It's you impact so many other people by being able to stay alive and thrive.
Yep. I love it. Awesome. Okay. So as we start landing, last question is going to be the easy ones. Like, how can people get a hold of you? So we'll ask that in a second. But before then, I always like to ask every single guest this. This is the Meet Cool People show. So I would love to hear your thoughts on what does Meet Cool People mean to you?
Um, I I meet a lot of cool people, and I don't think I can curse. Correct me if I'm wrong. Um, but some people who you meet who just are genuine and authentic, and have this special thing about them that they want to be able to just be present, listen to you, learn about you, and help you. And it doesn't matter what it is in any way, shape, or form, that they're like, you know, they do cool things. They do things that matter. They do things that make a difference. And they are about that in themselves. And they're somebody that is worth sharing your time and space and energy with. Because at the end of the day, this all is a giant energetic exchange, because we're all just balls of energy. And there is a thing where you have, like, with an ATM, you can't continually allow withdrawals. You have to do inputs. And whether that's from yourself or people around you with the good energy, these are cool people, and meeting cool people helps you replenish that store of energy for yourself. And kind of like having that oxygen mask on when you fly, you have to help yourself before you can help everybody else. Meeting cool people enables you to do that as well.
I could said that better myself. I loved it. That was probably I'm going to throw everybody else under the bus here and say yours was probably the best answer I've had so far.
Thanks.
I love it. Awesome. Well, cool. So last question, super simple one. How can people get a hold of you?
The easiest way is to send me an email at info@eaasc.com.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to throw that in the show notes. And I will make sure that I get a link for your book as well. I do highly recommend, I don't care what size your business is, please read this book. It is definitely going to be a good one. Like I said, I read it on the plane to and from Boise for my trip to go hang out with my family for my birthday. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was great stuff, but I geek out on the same stuff you do. So it was a lot of fun. So with that, thank you so much, Erika, for coming and hanging out with me. It was a great show, and I appreciate you coming and spending the time.
Thank you. Thank you for making it happen so quickly, too.
Awesome. All right, everybody, get out there. Have an amazing week. As always, if there's anything I can do to help you out, reach out, let me know. Take care. And that wraps up another Meet Cool People show. Now, if you like what you heard, be sure to give us a like, subscribe, or review so I can help introduce these amazing cool people to even more amazing cool people. And just remember, meeting cool people is just the beginning. You need to have a system in place to follow up with the amazing people that you meet. This is exactly what we do for our clients. Now, if you'd like to see if my team and I can help you, go to convertmoreclientsnow.com and check out the case study video to see exactly how we're helping our clients turn casual connections into cash clients for life. Again, go to convertmoreclientsnow.com and see how we can work together to turn you into a follow-up rock star.